again for joining us. If you have been to the Los Angeles space, you have probably seen me there. Again, my name's Alex. I'm the assistant studio manager over there. I was working in film before working at the YouTube space, and I love to teach this stuff, so this is going to be a great day for everybody. I want to first kind of go over some of the things that we will be covering, and keep in mind, you guys, that this is a 1-hour workshop to try to cover as many sort of like useful production tips from working from home as we can. But if you've been doing this for any amount of time, you know that there's a lot to know. So there'll be some things we'll be showing you. There's be some other things we'll kind of be probing you to go off and remember to check out on your own afterwards. But you know, we want to give you kind of a range of different things that you can do to improve your video quality at home, from just where to sit with your laptop to find good light, up to if you have a little bit of budget or a little bit of gear that you want to work with, being able to actually put that stuff to use as best as possible. So like it says here, you guys, we're going to be covering some just general tips no matter where you're shooting. So if this is going to be from at home, in a bedroom, in a tight space, or if you're in a studio, some certain things that we're going to be doing or that we're going to be talking about span all of those scopes of production. The good things to keep in the back of your mind as you're doing any scale of production. And again, if you've been making videos from home throughout this whole kind of weird time, you've probably run into some challenges that a lot of people face. Things like, you know, yard work, going outside, slow internet connection, that kind of stuff. So we talk about how to deal with some of those things. And then generally how to kind of get creative with what you have available to you. John's actually going to give you a really good presentation on how to kind of make production equipment out of the stuff that you just happen to have lying around the house at the time. And then if you do want to purchase some stuff, we'll give you some options for some cheap equipment that really goes a long way. You're not going to have to break the bank in order to get some stuff. So let's just jump right into it with some kind of general tips for shooting video, no matter where you are. So if you're in a corner of your bedroom, or if you're in a 40,000 square foot facility like the YouTube space in LA, this is all going to be stuff that no matter what you want to kind of keep cognizant of. First and foremost, whenever possible, try to use as much space as you possibly can, or as you practically can, I should say. And one of the main reasons for this is that in any kind of shot, in any like frame of video, you have a subject, you have a background. Sometimes you have a foreground as well. But it is easier to distinguish between that subject and background when there is actually physical space between the subject and background. The camera picks that up a lot more naturally. So if you're using something like what I've got right now, which is my own DSLR with a 50mm lens, you can see I have a certain perspective. My background is actually far enough away from me that it gets blurred out. If you're using a webcam or an iPhone or something with a very small sensor on it, it can be a little bit more difficult to achieve that look, but it does still help in separating physically the subject from the background and what you end up seeing on camera. So you can see here in this example, this is actually going to be Marissa's living room setup. She'll explain to you later on. You can see she's in the middle of the room with the camera to the right, kind of as close to the wall or the entertainment center as she can get. And then the background, what is behind her, is a good 6 to 8 feet behind her to the left. And that's a really good example of how to set up any kind of studio space that you're going to shoot where you want to have a clear subject and a clear background. Next, and this is probably one of the most valuable things that you can do, especially in a time where you're shooting at home and you don't know what kind of equipment you might have, is to take some time to consider and to improve your set design. So again, in this example, you can kind of see that Marissa is clearly our subject, and then there's really nothing distracting about the set itself. It's free from clashing colors. It's not too busy. It's symmetrical. It's neat. She's going to talk a little bit more about that later on. But without trying to improve your camera equipment or even your lighting, if you're shooting with an iPhone or a cinema camera that you might own, if the set that you're shooting looks good already, then you don't have to worry so much about the other things like the lighting and like the camera equipment. So that no matter where you are, especially if you're working in small spaces, we get that question a lot, is how do I make a small space look good? The easiest thing that or one of the only things that you can do really if you don't have space is to consider the design of the set itself. And then finally, try to think outside the box and get creative, right? So In this example, this is getting pulled from John's presentation. He's going to have a really great example of how to kind of get creative with what you have. So you're looking at what is kind of turned into a tripod. It's like a small articulating leg phone mount that is wrapped around a floor lamp. And so you can get that to the correct height that you might need without having a tripod. So, you know, whenever you're trying to think about like how to achieve a particular look at home, try to figure out where you'd want to place things. And then once you have that location kind of figured out, you can start looking around and be like, well, how would I mount this without having that correct gear? And if you start like really thinking about how to do it, like don't think about what you need to buy, but try to think about that other kind of creative solution, and you might find that you don't need to buy anything. So those are some things that just no matter where you're shooting or what you're shooting, those are always things to keep in mind. Use space, consider the design of your set, and try to get creative with your solutions for the things that you find that you need to do. So before we get into the first example, I want to throw out a poll or a quiz question for you guys to kind of see where everybody's at already with your camera knowledge or your general kind of production knowledge. This is a very basic concept when it comes to camera work, especially. So the question here is, which of the following is not part of the exposure triangle? If the exposure triangle is something you haven't heard of, this is definitely something you want to do a little bit more research on later on. For the purpose of this workshop, it's a little specific, it's a little more advanced, but this is definitely something that you want to look into and understand later on. So we'll give you a couple minutes for thinking about what you believe the answer might be. Yeah. Samir, are you seeing answers in the chat?
Yeah, we're getting a lot of answers, guys. I'm going to give them a minute to give us some more answers. Thank you guys for answering. Let's answer some questions that came in. We have
sure.
Questions from our Twitter and also the live stream. If you guys are following us in the live stream, please continue to give us these questions. They're great. Alex, one person commented that they recently adjusted their background and moved farther away from the wall. They got some great results from that, so it sounds like we're on the right track. One of the questions we got is, I'll approach it from two different angles. Let's say someone's filming by themselves. They're having difficulty keeping focus when they set up their shot and then they go to be in their shot. Is there any tricks to avoid that?
Yeah, definitely. So one thing you could try to do is set something up in your place. You want to be careful with this though, because depending on what your setup is, a lot of people are really kind of going for that like super sharp, super shallow depth of field. Now, like personally, I'm using autofocus on my camera, so you can see as I lean forward, it just tracks with me. As I lean back, same thing, it just tracks with me. If you don't have a camera that does that, or if you're using like razor thin depth of field because you're using a lens with a very wide aperture, you got to be really careful. But one thing you can do is put something in your place, just something that's got like a broomstick or like a broom itself is like a kind of classical, you know, Swiffer, something that like cleaning products. I don't know why that's the first thing I go to, but something that's tall enough you can put in your place and give you kind of a reference mark of where you'd be sitting so that you can then focus on yourself. And the other thing that you can try to do, depending on if your lens has it, is to actually just measure the distance. And a lot of lenses, or even just the cameras themselves, will actually tell you what that focus distance is. If you look on the top of the lens, a lot of times they have marks there that tell you what the focus distance is supposed to be. That's actually how they used to do it in the old days. They'd actually pull a tape from the camera to where the subject was going to be, and they'd physically focus based on distance because they couldn't see what they were actually filming at. So those two things, try measuring the distance and then try putting something in place of you to focus on instead.
Great. Thank you, Alex.
Cool.
Sounds like we answered that question. I think we got enough answers. I'll save some more questions for later.
All right.
Looks like mostly I see C. I see a lot of C's, some A's, and some D's.
Great, because C is the right answer. There's no prize for this, but you get the pride of saying that you got it right, I suppose. While the white balance is not part of the exposure triangle, it is still equally as important, if not more important, than the, I'd say equally as important, as the exposure settings in your camera. The white balance is basically what makes sure that your colors come out right, depending on the kind of light that you're using. So it's definitely something to look up. We will talk more about white balance later on. I'm sure some people have questions about it as well. But before we get too into the rabbit hole of white balance or the exposure triangle, I want to begin by handing it off to my colleague and good buddy, Omar. Again, if you've been at the YouTube space in LA, you've probably seen him walking around the tech cage or just the space in general. Omar is going to show us how he got, or how and why he got this setup. So Omar, go ahead and take it away. Definitely want to unmute your mic, Omar.
Sorry about that. Sorry. Hello, everyone. Thanks, Alex. Great tips. I'm really excited to be here, guys. Today we're going to go over my living room setup. The person you see here, this is my lovely wife, who volunteered to be my talent for this look. Before creating this look, the first thing I asked her, if you had a YouTube channel, what would it be? Her response was a fashion lifestyle channel. The reason I'm giving you guys the content is because I also wanted to understand what I was trying to go for and what would be my final look. And then to figure out where I'm going to shoot this. And I chose this corner of my living room because I was able to get my curtains and the white wall, the plain white wall that you can see there, to be on the same shot. Because I could just shoot directly to the white wall, but I couldn't get anything out of it. If you already noticed, I'm not working with as much. Like, I don't have light source, I don't have more camera, more lighting gear to light that backdrop. So I have to be creative. So I was able to use my curtains as a texture to give a better look of my shot. Next is the wardrobe. Wardrobe is really important. I'm not sure if Alex kind of mentioned the wardrobe, but I think wardrobe is really important as well because it gives a better look to your shot. We're working with plain white color, eggshell looking, so I needed to add more to my shot. So we chose this wardrobe, her blouse, orangey, just because I know that it could give her a separation between the background and give her a better look. So, and now is where she's going to be sitting on. We chose this stool that you can see in the photo. It's because it gave her a better posture. And we tried on the couch, we tried different areas in the living room. It didn't work out. This was the better. And also I noticed that she was sitting with this, it gave her better confidence. So I would recommend, try it out. Try it everywhere, dining room area, living room area, anywhere you can, just to try it out. Next is the surroundings. So what Alex did mention about your surroundings, I live in the first floor. It's pretty noisy. If you notice right away, I'm working next to a window. That's my patio, and next to the patio, there's like a grass area. Around the time we shot this around 7 p.m. This is a quiet time for us because mostly people are inside having dinner. But if I shoot this around 10 a.m., from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m., it's so noisy. There's a lot of people outside working, people, foot traffic, people going to work, or stuff like that, walk the dogs. So I make sure I have to find a perfect time to shoot this. And for us, 7 p.m., it was 7:30 was the perfect time. So, and I know a lot of people are working at home. I know you have roommates, stuff like that. So always make sure what's the best time, works best for you guys. Next is my lighting. What am I using for light source? So right away you see I'm using the floor lamp as a prop and a light source. The floor lamp I'm using to light one of her side of her face, and then the other light it's attached to my DSLR camera. It's an LED camera, LED light that I'm using and to light her front of her. And then I'm using a little bit of natural lighting. I'm using the curtains slightly open to use the natural light to fill the other half of her face. One thing I do want to mention, just ignore the camera settings on the photo on the right. Just want to make sure, I know the camera settings are a little bit off, but the point of this look, I just want to make sure you guys understand that I was trying to go for, and be creative with stuff that you have at home. So the other thing I would love to do next time is to just have her a little bit away from the background just to have separation, like what Alex was mentioning. But overall, I'm really proud of this look. So, yep, this is my setup. And we can get back to Alex. If you have any questions, let us know. Thank you.
Awesome, Omar. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Alex.
Yeah, you guys, there's a lot of good stuff in there to pick up. I hope if nothing else, the time of day shooting, right? Like I'm sure a lot of you guys have been shooting at home and found out that there's certain times of day that, the trash is getting picked up, the leaf blower is going on outside. And that's kind of one of those challenges of shooting at home. But this is a really great example of just what things you can look for and what kind of little things you can do to improve your video quality. The stool too was another great one. A lot of people know that they don't want to be standing, but know that when they sit down, you kind of get that like slouched over sort of look, right? And so a good way to fight that is to deal with that rather, is to use a stool instead. So you can still sit down, but because there isn't a back to it, people tend to sit a little bit more upright. So if you have one or if you don't, it's a good idea to either try to find something you can use as a stool or at least just like a backless chair to be able to rest, but also get that kind of good upright posture. So cool. We're going to move into another quiz question for you guys to see again where everybody's sort of at. That we're trying to, if you haven't noticed, what we're trying to do is kind of like sprinkle in little bits of knowledge in here. Again, we got an hour. There's a lot to cover. But we want to try to make sure that you guys are getting as much as possible throughout this presentation. So little quiz question for you guys to see where you're at again. When you're shooting at 30 frames per second, usually shoot at 24, 30 frames, or sometimes 60, depending on what kind of content you're shooting. If you're shooting at 30 frames per second, what should your shutter speed be? Is it 1/30, 1/48, 1/60, or is it 1/100? If you don't know what shutter speed is, just take a while to guess at it. And I think while you guys are answering those questions, Samir, do we have any questions to go over through the chat?
We had a lot of good questions coming in. Guys, as we're seeing these questions, don't worry. Actually, a lot of great questions, great lead-in questions. We're getting a lot of questions on how do I eliminate shadows? People want to be able to put a light in front of themselves without it reflecting in their glasses. We have who are asking if they don't have a lot of natural light at home and they want to film outside. We have folks who want to film action shots outside. So
Samir, can I jump on one or two of those?
Please.
Yeah, some of those are good. So the first one that you said, which it's a very common one. How do I eliminate shadows? You don't eliminate shadows. So the idea usually when somebody says, how do I eliminate shadows, is they're trying to say like, how do I make my shadows not look as bad? So there's good, like I have shadows on my face right now, but I'm using a soft light as a key, but you can see there's a shadow area on my face. And so shadows are fine, but what you don't want is really hard distracting shadows. The other time that you usually have shadows that you're trying to eliminate is if you're doing something like green screen, or if you're sitting very close to your background, that key light that you have set up is casting a shadow on your background. And to get rid of that, you're really just moving yourself away from that background so that the shadow is cast somewhere that isn't being picked up on frame. There's a couple of different solutions for that, but you're never really trying to eliminate the shadows. You're just kind of dealing with them in a different way. You're kind of mitigating the shadows. I will say this is a common thing that people try that isn't a solution, is don't add more lights to get rid of shadows. So if you see shadows on your background, if you take another light and point it at that shadow, it's just going to throw off your exposure. It's not necessarily going to get rid of the shadow. It's just going to kind of mask it in a poor way. And Samir, there was something else you had mentioned on there at the beginning that I wanted to touch on too real quick.
Glasses, if someone's wearing
glasses, I believe. That was a really good one. Honestly, there's not a whole lot you can do with that. If you want to be front lit and you've got glasses, you're going to have glare. If you look at Marissa right now, actually, so I think Marissa has some glasses that have a particular coating on them that you can get when you get glasses that are kind of anti-glare, and it sort of disperses the light. There's like a rough kind of coating on the front of them. And she's actually got a key. She's looking right into it right now. But you can see that it isn't a bright reflection. It's kind of like a blue haze to it. And if you wear glasses commonly and they have to be part of your look, Honestly, in my years of production, that's like the best way to handle it, because now you're not having to change around where your lighting is, because there really just isn't a way to deal with it outside of positioning your lights in a way where you're not going to see that reflection, and then that ruins the lighting design that you normally have, or that you might want to get. So don't think that there's like a magic thing of like, oh, how do I get rid of that reflection without moving my light? You can't. You have to either move your lighting, get rid of the glasses, or have glasses that have that kind of coating on them that's that anti-glare. So
yeah, Alex is right. It's just a matter of kind of finding that sweet spot where the light isn't showing up in your glasses. Something that they often do in film and television is they'll have the actor have their glasses on like so, and they'll actually find a way to their prop, or sometimes they can manage to get the glasses to go up in the back so that your lenses are actually facing down and not reflecting your light source. So like right now it looks relatively normal, but if you look at my ears, it's not resting on them. So if you could find a way to prop up your glasses that way, that's one way to get rid of reflections.
Yeah, I saw somebody also mention polarizers. So polarizers can work, but they work with glare. They work with glare reflection. So if a glass surface is reflecting the glare from something else, but not necessarily the light source itself, so you wouldn't be able to necessarily like dial out the total reflection, but it might help with a little bit of glare, like color cast and something like that. Okay, I think let's jump back into it here. By now, hopefully you guys have thought of what you believe the answer to be, and the answer is 1/60. So generally speaking, whatever your frame rate is when you're recording, you want to double that number, and that's what you will have as a shutter speed. And shutter speed affects your motion blur. When your shutter speed is double your frame rate, the motion blur that you end up seeing is normal to life. This isn't a hard and fast rule, so don't think that you have to do this all the time. If you're shooting green screen or high action, you might actually shoot with a higher speed shutter speed. You would definitely shoot with a higher shutter speed. But when this is something that's dictated by your frame rate. So if you're shooting at 30 frames or 24, just double that number. That's what you should be using for a shutter speed for normal looking motion blur. All right, I am going to hand it off now to Ellie from New York. If you guys have been to the New York space, you've definitely seen her around, I'm sure. Ellie's going to show us a little bit about doing some external, exterior, there we go, daytime stuff. So Ellie, go ahead and walk us through your setup here.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, Alex. So hey, everyone, I'm Ellie. I'm the studio assistant for Space New York. And as Alex said, I'm going to kind of talk you through an exterior setup using pretty much only natural lighting. Now, as the weather gets a little bit nicer, I know those of you in LA, you don't really have that issue. But for those of us in New York, it's now summer. It's getting a bit nicer outside. And with that, you might want to head outdoors. It's especially great if you don't have a very versatile interior setup. It's a great idea to head outdoors. There's a lot you can work with what's already there. Now, the first thing I can say is when you head outside, you really want to find out, look for your light source. Where is the sun? Pro tip, if you can film on an overcast day, you might want to do so. Overcast days typically allow for pretty even lighting, and you won't end up with very harsh shadows or, too much backlight coming in or something like that. So overcast days can be a really great time to film. Also note when you are filming outside, you can't really control the elements. So that's just something to be wary of. Clouds can move, the sun will set eventually. So it's just things to kind of be aware of. But if you are filming when it's sunny out, there's still a lot we can work with. So the first thing, like I said, you want to do is position your talent in relation to the sun. Shout out to my dad for being my talent here. So what you do is you really are using your sunlight as your key light, your main light source. So with that, you are typically going to want the talent to be facing the sun. If you were shooting into the sunlight, you could end up with too much backlight and some pretty harsh shadows. But if your talent is looking into the sun, they will be fairly well illuminated. What could happen though is if sunlight is hitting, let's say, one side of their face, you could end up with some harsh shadows on the other side. And that's where certain things like reflectors could come into play. But we'll talk about that in just a minute. We'll get to that a little bit more. But like I said, you typically would want to position your talent facing the sunlight. We could advance right to the next slide. And this right here is the wide setup. So we talked before about the importance of spacing and having a good depth. So you can see I positioned my talent away from the fence behind him, and the camera is even was a bit in front of him, and I used a little bit longer of a lens, and I zoomed in for a tighter shot, so we could kind of tighten up that frame a little bit. And off to the right, as I mentioned before, I had a 5-in-1 reflector clamped up to a C-stand. Now, I do have a bit of production gear here, but we'll talk about in a little bit later other ways you can kind of use a similar idea, even if you don't have some of these objects right here. And on our next slide, this is just a close-up of the camera. I would like to note, wouldn't recommend necessarily using these settings you see on the camera right there. This was just something quick I used to capture this image. But what I do want to point out is you can see on the right, the top of my tripod has several different levelers. And I think it's extra important, especially when you're filming outside, to really make sure your tripod is leveled. You know, typically the ground or the gravel, wherever you might be filming, isn't as even as a studio floor or even your living room floor. So don't be afraid to do a test record. And I think that's super important, whether you're filming inside, outside, wherever you are. Always do a test record before you film, just so you can make sure the image and everything is coming in clear and looks the way that you want it to, so it won't mess up, you know, your final shot. Do a test record first. But really important to make sure everything is nice and even. And now I'll talk a little bit more about the reflector that I mentioned before. So 5-in-1 reflectors are a really great piece of equipment. They're not very expensive. They come bundled up in a nice little package, but when you open it out, there's 5 different sides that you can use. So this right here, I have the silver side up. And like I said, that's clamped down to a C-stand. And what that helps to do is, let's say your sunlight is coming in from the left side on camera left, and you notice the camera right, the side of the talent space is a little bit shadowed. So that reflector, if you hold it up, it can actually take some of the sunlight coming in and bounce it back to reflect on the other side of your talent space, which will help, like I said, eliminate some of those shadows. So like I said, I have the silver side up here, but the reflectors, the 5-in-1 reflectors at least, will also have a white side, a black side, a gold side, and it's a ring of diffusion right in the middle. So a lot of different ways that you can utilize that, all just to give you different looks depending on the type of video that you're filming. But there's, like I said, a lot you can do there. They're not very expensive online, but if you also can build one yourself. So if you take a piece of cardboard and you have some silver or gold wrapping paper, that'll leave a nice smooth finish. But you could also use a piece of even aluminum foil. That'll all help reflect a little bit of that light back. And I know most people probably don't have their own C-stands. That's okay. You can use binder clips and clip something to a drying rack. Really, whatever you have at home can work to kind of prop that up and really help better light your talent. But in general, these are just some tips to kind of better help if you're filming outdoors. So with that, Alex, I will toss it back to you.
Ellie, such good stuff there. I think you know, I'm looking at the chat here too a little bit myself, and I'm noticing a lot of people, which is great, mentioning that gear is not like the be all and end all of production, and this is kind of the perfect example. Is so many of the little snags that you run into. Like, I know if you're any kind of OCD like I am with your image, if you had that line in the fence there and your tripod was just a little bit off level, that would drive me insane.
Oh, yeah.
So it really is all those other things besides the gear that matter way more.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Samir, did we have any questions that stood out to you that we want to tackle? Oh, actually, hold up. Before we get into that, I'll leave you guys with a quiz question, and then we'll answer some of them in the middle, because we're done with the setup. So, of course, we're going to a quiz question. So getting a little bit more into white balance, before we were talking about it, which color temperature, speaking of shooting outside, is correct to match daylight? So again, if you're not familiar with color temperature, different kinds of lighting you use. You might have bought different like fluorescent bulbs or used different lights that look a little bit more warm, a little more cool, amber, blue kind of. So this is getting into how to match that stuff. So which of these is the correct color temperature if you're going to be shooting outside in daylight? We'll give you a couple minutes to think about that. And then Samir, maybe we have some questions to answer.
Yes, we already have a lot of answers coming in for the multiple choice guys. So thank you so much. Just want to thank everyone from joining us, all the different streaming platforms. If you were with us from the Creator Academy or the YouTube Creators channel, thank you. We're getting a lot of questions from people who are either recording audio on their phone, or they're doing everything from their phones, trying to get lighting source, trying to record audio, trying to do all of that. And I know we've talked a lot about the basic principles that we've been doing, but just wanted to pick you guys' brain if you had any additional tips on people who are just, you know, recording on an iPhone or an Android.
Yeah, so the kind of good thing about that is Actually, I think a lot of people see the phone as like a hindrance, but a good way to look at it is really like a really great training tool, because you imagine if you're locked into a particular angle or a particular like field of view, like a particular lens, if you will. You can, but one thing I will say to definitely do, it still surprises me how many people are not aware of this today, but you can lock the exposure and the focus typically by just tapping and holding on a place, like it would be your face if you were going to be like doing a vlog. And that way, when you turn around and different light sources come in, your phone wouldn't auto adjust to those exposures. So that's just one good way to make it look a little bit more consistent, a little bit more professional. The other thing is to get a, so we mentioned audio. So I'm using, you can see a little lavalier here. If you can buy lavaliers that will actually plug directly into your camera, which is great, because then you can have a phone kind of out here, and then your audio is going to be going, or going to be staying close to you, which is the key to getting good quality audio, is having the microphone be close. And then that audio can get fed directly into your camera. So look for something like that. Depending on your phone, you might have to get like an actual mic jack, or like a lightning bolt cable or something like that. But having a mic on you is a great thing. Locking that exposure, and then still, trying to find that good lighting and find that good set design and stuff like that. Even using your phone, it is a great kind of training tool, so that when it does come time for you to get a camera, you know what that camera is bringing to the table as far as features and how you're going to make the most of them, without just relying on, oh, if I buy this cool new camera, then my video is going to look better. Because it just doesn't work like that.
Thanks, Alex.
Yeah, thank you, Samir.
I know we touch a little bit more on that coming up, so you guys will get some more tips. I know some people were asking about tripods they can use with phones, and I know we touch on that, so you guys will see more coming up. Thank you for touching on that. Also, just real quick, I wanted to answer a couple of questions. I know we have a lot coming in about how do I grow my channel. We have some specific questions about folks who are just curious about live streaming, anything like that. I want to direct you guys to the Creator Academy. Just today, we're focusing more on production fundamentals, mainly just camera and lighting. We'll try and touch on as much as we can, but in terms of platform questions, I want you guys to be able to get your answers as well. So in the live stream chat, I'm just going to link that right now to our learning toolkit for the Creator Academy. Save that for later. I'll be mentioning it at the end of today's workshop again. I just wanted you guys to have a resource because I know we had those questions coming in. Thanks, guys.
Sweet. Thanks again, Samir. And we're going to give you the answer to the quiz question. If you picked D, you don't win anything, but you are correct. So the different kinds of lights have different what they call color temperatures. You notice, again, they get kind of warmer or cooler depending on what that color temperature is. The sun usually is 5,500 degrees Kelvin. So when you're trying to white balance your camera or match your camera's settings to it, that's the number that you're looking for, 5,500, 5,600. Something to keep in mind, though, is that throughout the day, that color temperature is actually changing since the sun's moving throughout the sun, throughout the sky. The lower the sun is in the sky, the warmer it will tend to look. Also, if it goes behind clouds, the color temperature of the light then goes way higher. It's actually something more like 6,500 degrees Kelvin. So that's a good thing to know anyway, though. If you're going to go outside and shoot in daylight and you aren't letting your camera auto white balance, you set your camera for around 5,500 degrees or so, and that should get you pretty close. So next, I want to pass it off to Marissa to quickly go over her living room setup here. You might have seen this photo already if you were here at the beginning, and she's going to kind of break down how she did this and what it yielded her. So Marissa, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex. Hi, guys. I'm Marissa. I am a studio coordinator at the YouTube Space LA. And I'm going to quickly go over some basic 3-point lighting and how I would approach it in my home. But first, I want to break down what's happening in this photo here. As you can see, I have a large, wide open living room, and I have a big source of natural light coming in through my balcony windows. Now, in some cases, natural light can work against you when using LED or hot lights, color temperature being one factor. But You'll see in a sec why it helps my situation. Also take note of my couch placement. As Alex had mentioned before, it's away from the wall, which creates a sense of depth for your shot and will help to avoid shadows you may get from your key light. All right, so back to it. What is three-point lighting? Well, we always hear about it, and it's kind of one of the first things that you learn in film school, and for good reason. It's lighting a subject from 3 points. So you have your key light, which is your main source illuminating your subject. You have your fill light to adjust contrast across your subject, and your backlight or your hair light to separate your subject from the background and to give them a little bit more pop. And in this case, I'm treating my key and the fill the same. So I have one big soft source, which will help the light wrap me around me a little bit more softly. Ideally, I'd like my backlight raised up and armed out above my head, but because my ceiling's so low, I was starting to catch the softbox in the frame. If I had a smaller light, it would have worked perfectly. So instead, I just placed it directly behind the couch for a little kicker off my head. And finally, as I mentioned before, I left my windows open so I can illuminate that back wall. I'm not getting any weird color shifts that would complicate my white balance because the color temperature is already so similar. And if we go to the next slide, this is what you get. So I have soft, even lighting on the subject, and the background wall is getting a nice gradient from the window, but not overpowering the brightness of the subject in the foreground. Things to keep in mind. So pay attention to your set dressing. If done right, you end up with a nice composition. Keep it simple, keep it clean, keep it organized. If you're trying to do too much, it becomes distracting and will take the attention away from the subject. Watch for color relationships throughout your frame. They should complement each other. Too many colors or clashing colors can be very distracting. And wardrobe included. I wanted to find a color that worked with everything around me, but at the same time worked with my skin tone. Too light of a color and it would have started to become a wash. Too dark of a color and I would have blended in with the couch and kind of looked like a floating head. And if we go to the next slide, we just see close up so you can better see what the light is doing on my face. If I wanted more shape and contrast to my face, I would just play a little bit more with the key and the fill. So I could power my key to be a little brighter than the fill, or if your lights don't dim, you can physically move your fill light further away, making it less powerful and essentially a little bit softer. I could also move around the position of the lights to not be quite so frontal. Or I could even just eliminate the fill light altogether for a more dramatic look, which actually is what I'm doing in this current webcam setup. I'm only working with 2 lights, but I'll get into that a little bit later. So yeah, 3-point lighting is really just a starting point. Just experiment, like really experiment, record your lighting tests, keep track of light placement, try different setups so you can really see what the light is doing and get a feel for what you like. And I'm gonna hand it off to Alex again and see if we have any questions.
Awesome, Marissa. Thanks again. Yeah, you guys, if you the lights that Marissa's got are very attainable. Like they're very popular lights. I'm willing to bet that a lot of you guys in the chat already own something kind of similar to this. It's just a typical softbox lighting. It's almost everybody's first like film lights, right? And this is an excellent way to kind of explain what you're trying to do with that. 3-point lighting is the skeleton for pretty much all lighting setups. If you're looking at all of our cameras right now, we are all pretty much set up with some version of 3-point lighting, meaning, well, I don't want to explain away too much before we get into our next quiz question, of course. We're going to see how much y'all were paying attention and how much you might know already about this. So which of the following here is not part of 3-point lighting? We'll talk about the answer in just a sec, but Samir, maybe we got some questions to go over?
We did have a couple of clarifying questions. I think we may have touched on them earlier, but it may be worth just revisiting. Some folks want to talk about your blurred background again. They want to find out how to achieve that look.
Gotcha. Yeah, so blurred background. So the technical term for this is called depth of field. I mean, the depth of field is basically how much of the shot is in, or what area, distance rather, is in focus. You get depth of field by 3 things. And this is not something we talk about here, but this is good. If you're ready to write these down, it's a good thing to do. So number 1 is the aperture setting of your lens. The wider the aperture, the thinner your depth of field is going to be. Number 2 is going to be the focal length of the lens you're using. If you're using a more telephoto lens, it'll be easier to achieve a thinner depth of field where the background and foreground will be thrown out of focus. And then the other thing is the focus distance. So if you watch my background very closely, as I get closer to the camera and it focuses on me closer, it's getting real close, you can see the background's going further out of focus. As I lean back into it, it's getting further in focus, or it's getting more in focus. So those 3 things, the aperture setting, the focal length of the lens, and then the focus distance, all affect your depth of field. So this is one of those things where you may need to purchase some equipment because it's very difficult. It's almost impossible to achieve thin depth of field with like an iPhone or any kind of camera that has a very small sensor on it, like a GoPro or webcam, something that's on your, like in your laptop. If you're using your laptop or a device built-in camera, you forget about getting depth of field or getting that blurry background. So you have to have a camera, something like a crop sensor DSLR camera is a good place to start. They're fairly affordable, and you can get a lens that would be allow you to get that focal length. A 50 millimeter f1.8 is a good lens to kind of look into. They call it the nifty 50 for a lot of cameras. It's a good way to start kind of looking for that depth of field or that kind of blurred background kind of look.
Thanks, Alex.
Cool. Yeah, no worries. That's a great question. I'm glad that somebody asked that, actually. So let's go to the quiz question.
Oh, sorry.
We have another one.
Overwhelming A. It looked like this time people were pretty sure.
That's good because that's the correct answer. Yeah, so your 3-point lighting setup is going to consist of a key light, a fill light, and a backlight. Key light being the main source of light. So right now my key light is, I'm actually taking a light and slamming it into a wall, and then the reflecting off the wall is what's lighting me right now. My backlight, you can see I've got one here and another one kind of going down across my shoulders and in my hair as well. And then the fill light is this area of shadow that I have here. If I had something over here that was reflecting a little bit more light, kind of similar to what Ellie was showing us earlier, that would be your fill. So a key, a fill, a backlight, those are all part of your 3-point lighting. A catch light is the little reflection of a light in someone's eye. So usually you can see, if you look very closely, you can see as I look into camera, there's a little reflection of the light that's actually illuminating my face here. That's called a catch light. Depending on the position of the key light, sometimes you see it, sometimes you don't. But it usually helps kind of give that little twinkle of life in someone's eye that just makes them look a little bit more lively. Or in horror, sometimes they use it to specifically make someone look a little less lively. Great, so we're getting kind of short on time here. I want to make sure we get time to go through John and Marissa's final setup here. So I'm going to hand it off to John. He's going to show you how he got this set up. Now this one, you guys, if you don't have film equipment, you definitely want to pay attention here because John's going to go over some really, really great examples of how to use common stuff that you'll find around your apartment or your bedroom to use as solutions for filmmaking problems. So John, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Alex. Hi, everybody. My name is John. I'm a studio coordinator here in Los Angeles, and I want to give you a glimpse into my room. So the beginning of everything, I didn't have any equipment. I have a cell phone. I have a couple GoPro options, but very limited lighting options as well. So trying to come up with a setup that was usable was difficult at first, but also kind of fun because I actually have a background in lighting. So that enabled me to kind of tackle certain obstacles that I had. So if you notice in this shot, I chose a wide angle because I figured, me personally, if I'm going to be talking in front of a camera, I needed to get used to it. And in order to do that, I wanted to be able to stand. So I wanted to stand. I wanted to have room in my frame to move around. So in order to accomplish this, fortunately, I have some GoPro attachments that was able to connect to my phone. And I had a special tripod that had posable legs that allowed me to wrap around a 6-foot floor lamp that I have. And fortunately, if you set it up close enough to the top, it also sets you up right next to a good lighting source because it's right over the camera. It's centered. It has a little soft little cone wrapped around it. And I also had inside was a special LED globe that I was able to control with my phone. And I was able to use it to match the color temperature of the window or the light that was coming through my window behind me. For this reason, I did this because I wanted to match that room temperature best, because that was kind of the main light source or ambient light that was coming from my window. Um, yeah, so I found this to be a really cool, really cheap option to get a nice high angle and a nice soft key light. One thing that I also tried to soften the light even more was I took a white t-shirt and I threw it over it. And this actually did a really cool thing with my face. It made it a lot more softer. The only problem is it took down the ambient light in my room, which is something that I was fighting for. So I put the t-shirt on, and all of a sudden the light that was hitting the ceiling was just gone. So it didn't work for me for this setup, but it might be something that can work for you. Something else unconventional that I tried was I utilized my TV. So it's a 55-inch TV, and to my left, I found a white video on YouTube that it was like a 10-hour video. It was supposedly the color temperature of 2700 Kelvin, but just know that not all TVs are calibrated the same, so don't really take that for what it is. Really just find a color temperature that works best for you, and always reference your camera, which in this case I ended up using my iPhone 8. So yeah, I set up my camera, I looked, and I saw that this video worked the best. And I also went into the TV settings and went into the backlight settings, and I was able to use that as sort of a dimmer to control the intensity. And by using this, I was able to give myself a little bit more shape on the side. If we go to the next slide, we'll notice that my the left side, my left arm there, there's just a little kiss, a little hint of light there that's giving me even extra or more separation from the background. Another thing that I'm utilizing to separate myself from the background was I understood that my walls aren't white; they are actually kind of a brown color, and my bed and windows and stuff, it was a lot of kind of dark, earthy tones. So I wanted to choose wardrobe that was that kind of contrasted that, so I stood out more. So I chose more saturated colors for that extra separation. Another challenge that the biggest challenge that I faced was how do I tackle this window? It's not something that you want to try to compete with, especially if you don't have lights. But with my background in lighting, I thought of a few techniques to fix it. So first, I wanted to control the light spill that was coming from around the curtains. So the one thing that I did was at the top of the window, I had a 4-foot level that was in my closet. I laid it over the top, and then I took some black clothing to kind of blend in with the curtains. And what this did was it helped control the spill that was shooting out from the top of the window there. And then I also taped up the side curtains of the wall so I wasn't getting more daylight spill from there. And to get even better exposure for me inside, I wanted to take down how much sunlight was hitting the blinds. So what I did was I taped 2 clean white t-shirts, ironed them first. That's not important. I was just proud that I actually did that. Taped them up, and that took down my exposure enough so that I could actually increase the exposure of me inside and not have the blinds blow out as much and have it distracting. So I found kind of a happy medium so that you could still see detail in the blinds, but more importantly, you could still see my face. And then for another thing that I did was to decorate the walls, I had some posters up. Fortunately for me, I didn't have any posters that had a reflective surface. I had some posters that had a matte surface, because fighting reflections is another thing that you probably don't want to get into. But if you have to, try to find something that isn't reflective. If you do have a reflective background, though, there is something that you could try to do. You could try to wedge either you could get like a piece of paper, balled up piece of tape. I used a sock at one point, because you'd be surprised you wedge that behind the poster, and what that does is that just gives it a slight adjustment, and even that little angle fix, it'll redirect the reflection so that it doesn't show up on camera. Um, yeah, and just overall be aware of your background and what's being seen. I knew that my bed was going to be in shot, so I wanted to make sure that my bed was made. My little dresser in the background had was kind of neatly organized. But I noticed that in the lower left corner, it was just sort of an empty space. So what I wanted to do was I took an electric skateboard that I ride, and I put it over there. I propped it up on an Apple box, and it just kind of it filled in that little empty spot there. And it also tells you a little bit more something about me. And yeah, just don't be afraid to rearrange your room and rearrange furniture. I wasn't about to move my bed, but replacing that or putting the electric skateboard in the corner was a safer option. That's all I have for right now. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Alex. Thank you.
Yo, I hope you guys were paying attention to that one in particular, because if you notice, John didn't use a single piece of actual production gear except for maybe that little tripod thing, but he still manages to get a really good looking frame after all is said and done. And that was just through, ingenuity, and kind of like using surprisingly a good amount of laundry to solve the production problems that he had. A good thing to point out. So John did in this do a lot of work for his lighting, and I want to just kind of leave you guys with a general concept with lighting, since we can't really talk about it too much, and it's a very complex subject at times. But here's what you're trying to do with lighting: you're trying to use contrast to show shape or to show detail. So when John was talking about on that left side of him having that little extra light kind of wrap around him, that little highlight from the TV helps to show you kind of the shape and separation of him from his background. So whenever you're setting up lighting, or that's kind of the goal. Think about that. Is like, how can I show details or show shape by creating contrast with lighting? Contrast meaning having brighter areas and also darker areas. So that's
Before
just
we
a good.
move on, I just want to disclose that before you start throwing laundry on top of lamps, make sure that the light bulb isn't or is LED and it doesn't get too hot. You don't
Very
want to
good
start a
point.
fire on your in your set. Yeah, so
Very
just be
good point.
conscious of that.
Yeah, guys, remember that lighting can get hot. Yeah, I'm glad we went back for that one. All right, so very quickly, I want to throw it back to Marissa. She's actually going to explain how, if you like the way that Marissa looks currently, she's going to explain what she's doing to get this particular look. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how to use an external camera for your webcam, which all of us are doing in order to get a little bit more dialed in look. So Marissa, let's go right to you, and you can show us what's going on here.
Awesome. Thanks. All right. So, first of all, if we look at this picture, my apologies for the couch partially blocking my setup. But I wanted to quickly show you a wide shot of the space that I'm working with here. This type of setup comes in handy for video chats, meetings, or even a vlog if you have stuff that you need to read or present. I have my Nook area back there, which I am using again for this setup, but this time at a different angle. I rearranged the furniture a little bit to balance out the composition, and I had to place the guitar at the perfect angle so I wasn't getting glares from my key light. My backlight now, this is the ideal backlight setup that I would have liked in my previous setup. Raised up, armed out, pointed at the back of my head, and this helps to give you a good pop, separate you from the background, and helps you look less flat or more dimensional. Um, and I know this probably looks messy. If we actually go back to the previous slide, we could see how messy that looks with the cables and the stands and everything. But with a webcam, your actual webcam from your laptop or computer, you will see all of this. So keep that in mind. But if you are using a DSLR or a camera with like an interchangeable lens system, you are able to narrow down what you have within your frame and you have more control. And if we go back to that other slide, the second slide, so this is just another angle. This shows again the space that I've created between myself and the wall. Again, helps avoid shadows from your key light and can help you achieve that blurred background. Now, if you notice my shutters all the way to the far left, they're open to illuminate that back wall, and that helps me to eliminate the need for an extra light within my setup. If you notice, the other shutters are somewhat closed, and that's so I have just better control with my key light. And if we go to the next slide, this is just another angle so you could see what I'm working with here. So like I mentioned before, I'm only using the two lights, my key and my back. I've attached a softbox to my key to soften the light. And this helps make it not so harsh, one on my eyes, but also two on my face, so I don't look quite so scary to my viewers. Softboxes are also beneficial in that they make your source bigger. The size of your softbox is now how big your light becomes, helping the light wrap around you more softly. My camera's on a tripod just behind and above my laptop's camera. And you want to try and get these as close as possible for a more natural eye line during those meetings. And I also want to mention that a similar setup can be had for under $1,000, assuming you already have a laptop or a computer. So a camera, lens, tripod, a few lights, and a way to connect your camera to your computer. It's not always dependent on having the best or the most expensive gear. It's really more important to know how to use it well. And Alex is also a firm believer in this theory. So I'm going to toss it back to him, and he's going to quickly go over how to connect your camera to your laptop.
Yeah, you guys, that's a recurring theme. You're going, if you ever have workshops or talk to anybody who's been in production a very long time, they will tell you that the gear, what the gear is, how expensive it is, how nice it is not the important thing. It's how you're using all of it and what features it's bringing to the table for you. So in Marissa's case right here, these are just the general concepts: a soft light as a key, something as a backlight. And if you really want to improve your lighting setup very efficiently or effectively, throwing a backlight of any kind into the mix is something that's going to give you a really easy improvement to your lighting setup, where it's going to just kind of draw that little line around you and separate you from your background very easily. So this stand that Marissa's using here, this is called a C stand. They can be, up around $100, but honestly, if you're going to invest in any kind of film equipment, a C stand will hold pretty much everything. Almost everything you would buy is going to mount to it in some way, and they're very handy. So if you're going to purchase something, a C stand or a few of them in a sandbag or two, just to be safe with it, is a really great option. But I want to go to here, if you guys can look real close at the camera setup that Marissa's using. So she's using her DSLR as her webcam. This is something that is very possible and very, if you've already got a camera, it's one of the simplest things that you can do to improve your look. And there's one of two ways you can do it I want to talk about right now real quick. If you're setting up an external camera, all laptops, or pretty much all laptops, have a way to feed a video signal out of them to an external monitor, but not all of them have a way to take a signal back in. So there's a device called a capture card. In the middle here, you can see there's this little, it's called an Ultra Studio is the type of model there. But basically, it's a device that will take your camera signal, the video signal coming out of it, and turn it into a signal that your laptop can understand, or like a codec that your laptop can understand. Depending on your camera brand, you might need to purchase this device. Again, it's called a capture card if you want to look up a version for that. And you just want to make sure that it connects to your computer the way your computer has connections. So there's the newer USB-C, there's USB 3. So just make sure you're paying attention to your particular equipment for that. However, some cameras now allow you to just plug straight into the camera, or sorry, straight into your laptop via USB. So depending on what your brand is, certain brands or certain manufacturers have created software to allow you to just connect straight to your laptop via USB. And that makes it's a new kind of version of, or it's a new feature for a lot of these companies. So some of the software doesn't work with all programs. So that's something that you're going to want to just make sure to look into is, does your camera and work with this particular software? And will the software they provide to you actually give you a video signal for the conferencing or whatever video software you're going to be using to do your video conferencing or your live capture on your computer? So just make sure to kind of look into that, to your particular equipment and what your particular needs are. But this is a very possible thing to do. Again, either by using that capture card or by just plugging straight in if your particular camera allows you to. Something to look out for is, because everybody is kind of locked at home now and still wanting to do this, I would not be surprised to see pretty much all the major brands catch up to this capability within the next, like before the year is up. So kind of keep an eye out. If your brand doesn't currently do it, I'd be willing to bet that if you give them some months, they're going to develop some programs. Some brands are already there, but I think everybody's going to catch up pretty soon. And at that, I think we can take maybe a minute or two. I know we're a little bit over time, but can see what we think about getting.
Yeah. Thanks, Alex. We've been getting a lot of questions regarding we notice in a lot of your spaces, you guys are taking up like a whole room. Is there any, do you think some of these strategies would also work if your space was more confined, or is there any other
So,
method you'd recommend?
yeah, so really the only thing you can do with confined spaces is worst case scenario for shooting video. Just being honest. And the reason for that is because, like we were saying before, when you're trying to separate your subject and your background and get lighting to work in your favor, you can't do that in a small space, because you either will see your equipment or you'll be so close to your background that there isn't really a practical way to separate you from it. So unfortunately, the confined space problem is the hardest one to work with. What you can do is really focus on your set design, your wardrobe, even your makeup. If it's something that you have control over, where you could color your walls, either using colored lights or paint. If you're able to do that, consider your wardrobe, consider your makeup. And when I say makeup, I mean just simply like, taking a minute to powder, or like, make it so that you're not quite so shiny on camera. Those things really go a long way. But any amount of gear isn't going to really help shooting in a very tight space, because the physics of what you're trying to do just unfortunately don't work in them. So I would say more so try to find a place where you have more room, if possible, than to try to throw. Don't expect to be able to throw gear at it and fix the problem. It's only going to really kind of compound it. So focus on that set, focus on the colors you're using, so that what winds up on camera looks good from the get-go.
Great, thank you, Alex. And then another question we had that came up earlier in the live stream, but also was reiterated through our Twitter channel, or Twitter account. When you're lighting two different subjects, I know right now a lot of people are at home by themselves, so we focus more on a single person. But yeah. Any tips for lighting two separate subjects in more of an interview setting?
It would depend. So basically, if you're going to do like two people kind of facing each other, you're essentially just kind of mirroring your lighting setup. But also, if you're going to have like two people sitting next to each other, so if I had somebody also in my shot, the concepts are all exactly the same. Everything's just bigger. So you would either use a bigger light source or a bigger room. You need a wider angle usually, but all of the concepts are still there. You just do everything the same. So if you're ever like even looking on like professional TV shows or talk shows or something like that, the general practices that they're using for the lighting, no different than what like I'm currently doing right now. It's just that the lights themselves are bigger, or they're using more of them in order to do basically the exact same thing, just over a wider area. So it's really the only thing I would say to you is just that's kind of a point where you might have to invest in some larger or more powerful equipment to be able to do the same thing with multiple people. One simple way to do it, if you're looking for like the kind of production hack, is if you're in a fairly small, medium-sized room, if you get just one super bright light and just kind of blast it at a wall or the ceiling even, it tends to kind of help fill the room with like an ambient soft light that'll help you light both people evenly without having to direct lights straight at them. So that's kind of a good tip if you don't have a lot of gear to work with.
Thanks, Alex. I think we got through a lot today. I tried to keep the questions more basic so that everyone could get some info. Yeah, I think we started a lot of great discussions today. I want to remind everyone that this is not the end of our instruction. We will be doing this again. And the Spaces team has also been offering some virtual offerings. I'll be providing a link to you guys for the newsletter to sign up for those. So please, if you think of any questions that come up in the meantime, save those. You'll be able to ask us when you sign up for those classes, and we'll be having a chance. This was a live stream for those of you if it wasn't sure. So it's interactive, and thank you guys so much for being a part of it and giving us the great questions and making it such a great workshop.